hit like and subscribe. You're watching the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel.
Peace, family. It's your brother, Marc Lamont Hill. Welcome to Night School. Every night here on the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel, we hold Night School where we break down the most controversial subjects, the most engaged debates, the most interesting subjects going on in the world today. And tonight is absolutely no different. I'm so happy to see you all here. We've been doing a lot of coverage the last couple of days of the Diddy verdict. As we approached the verdict, we were trying to make sense of the jury pool. We were trying to make sense of the deliberation process, and we were trying to read the tea leaves, as it were, to figure out exactly how the jury was going to rule or decide. And we found out, Diddy was found guilty. For those who don't know, and I don't think anybody on the planet doesn't know, Diddy was found guilty of 2 counts of transportation to engage prostitution, the Mann Act. He was found not guilty of racketeering and sex trafficking, and he was convicted on some lesser charges. And this is important. The Mann Act is a really interesting act, and I want to get into that. We're going to have Olurin come on later tonight. Olurin come in, a celebrated movement lawyer, activist. She's going to come in. In fact, she's here right now, I believe, to join us to help us understand what's going on, to help us make sense of the rules, to help us make sense of the verdict around the RICO, to help us make sense of the verdict around all these things. She's a busy woman. She's a brilliant woman. She's a wonderful woman. And as soon as she gets in here, we're gonna break it all down. But in the meantime, it's important to understand what this all means. There was the possibility that Sean Combs, Diddy, was going to spend the rest of his life in prison. There was the possibility that we were never going to see a world with Diddy outside of a prison cage, but that didn't happen. He managed to avoid the biggest charge, the RICO. He managed to avoid the sex trafficking charge for Jane Doe 1, Jane Doe 2, victim 1, victim 2. We know one of those people is Cassie, his partner, former partner, his girlfriend. The other is another Jane Doe who, again, we seem to know who it is. I'm not going to say who it is because it's not my business. And again, I think Jane Does need to be protected. But we've seen a lot of it. We've seen a lot of it come out about who this woman was. Anyway, all that to say, Diddy was convicted under the Mann Act. Now, if you don't know what the Mann Act is, the Mann Act was an act created in 1910. It was initially called the White Slave Traffic Act. This is super interesting, right? It was called, again, the White Slave Traffic Act of 1910. And it was part of this thing called white slavery. There's long been a concern. There's long been an idea. There's long been an idea, and I don't want to get into the weeds too much of it, but there's this thing called white slavery. It's a term that emerged in the mid-1900s to talk about the slavery or the enslavement of Christians throughout certain parts of the Ottoman Empire, etc. And it became used in the United States and in Europe as well to talk about sex slavery and forced prostitution, especially in Chicago and other parts of the Midwest. So this idea of white slavery is a relatively old but distinctly American thing. And the idea of the Mann Act, which was initially referring to the White Slave Traffic Act of 1910, was basically to protect white women from sex trafficking. And to call it white slavery is super fascinating, right? Because to call it white slavery is to presume that slavery by definition is for blacks, it's for browns, it's for anybody who's non-white. So slavery in and of itself ain't meant for white people. Slavery is no proper place, no proper experience for white people. And so that was the Mann Act. And so that act has been used to crack down on prostitution. It's also been used to crack down on interracial relationships. We know Jack Johnson was one of the original famous victims of the Mann Act. Now, this Diddy thing's a lot more complicated because, Diddy ain't Jack Johnson. And we'll get into all of that. But we actually have joining us right now one of my favorite people in the whole world.
Hey, Mark.
The legendary. the woman. So, you know how, like, with the Diddy trial, there was like the civil piece, and then the feds came in and it all started crumbling down, but it all started with that one thing. When we look at the fall of Eric Adams, we're gonna say it all started when Olay stepped up on the Breakfast Club with Eric Adams and just took all of his lunch. I mean, she just ate his lunch and he ain't been the same since, man.
Thank you, Herr Mark. We feel like I did something valuable my year last year.
Yo, you could die happy. Yo, don't ever let anybody tell you, you didn't matter. Zohar Mamdani owes you a great debt of gratitude as well. All of New York does.
Thank you.
But it's so good to see your face. I feel like I haven't talked to you.
It does feel like it's been all year. That's why when I got the request today, I was like, I'm gonna stay up. I literally text Princess, like, Princess, I'm a tired body gal, but I'm staying up for work.
Yo, and you don't know how much I appreciate that. And I wanted to do your show earlier. I literally jumped on air and I had to be in Philly.
Mark, you are the busiest man in America. I want you are so busy, reasonably. When I made the request, I said, I know that man is busy. Tell him I understand.
I logged out and jumped right in the car and drove straight to Philly and was there for like 2 hours and drove right back here to pick my son up from school and then came right back. I've been running. But I'm so happy to see you because throughout this Diddy trial, you've helped me make sense of it. We know today Diddy was found guilty on 2 of the 5 counts. It seemed like the least
the least serious of the
less serious offense. Yeah, right. So talk to me about that. When you saw all of it, how'd you make sense of it?
I think multiple things can be true. I think that that Boondocks quit where it's like every famous nigga is not Nelson Mandela, right? Like the system. I think that's true. While also there's always a kernel of truth. Like, let me put it to you this way. I think we know there are 2 different conversations I think that are being had. We have a conversation in the court of public opinion about whether or not Diddy is a monster or Diddy is an abuser. And I think that is yes. I think that's yes, regardless of what the outcome in the criminal trial. I think it can also be true that RICO, we know that RICO is something that is typically overused by prosecutions to go after Black people, to overcriminalize, for overreach. And I think that can be true here too. I think that it was probably a mistake to pursue the RICO. I think that RICO is very complicated to be understood by jurors. I think there's also, I don't like to criticize defense attorneys, especially because, the conversation becomes people vilifying defense attorneys. Like, how could you represent such and such? Or how could you do this kind of defense? And they have to do their jobs. And I think here they've shown they've done a good job. They've done a great job as far as being his defense team. I think what's unfortunate about the way that this case was done, this case is basically the way that their defense has been. I talked about this earlier with somebody, and I think I described it as a white man defense. Not to say it's not a legitimate defense. Like, it's how the law should work. The law should work where, like, okay, we know he's done these things or we know he's done terrible things, but if we're focused in the letter of the law on what the prosecution is charged him with and about RICO, it's about whether or not that's happened. And I think his attorneys challenged that in a very successful way that does not work out for people who typically look like Diddy in the criminal system. It's because 2 things, not just because Diddy is a rich and powerful man, but also because of who his victims are. I think if you look at the charges that he beat versus the charges that he won, it's very clear based on how the case was handled that people do not understand that how consent works. They don't understand how consent works, how violation works. It's clear that the jury, just like the court of public opinion, came to believe that if a woman has consensually had sex with you at any point in time, if she is involved in this relationship with you, if you are paying for her XYZ, then all of a sudden she has no ability. Consciously said it beautifully today. He said, basically, this case shows that a lot of people believe that if you agree to have sex on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, if on Friday you say no, and that person decides to beat you or force you or whatever have you, the public has a hard time understanding that is not consensual. And I think we see that reflected in these charges of even just how the case was handled, the closing statements, the cross-examination, the prosecution's, the defense's argument was very, these women are this. See these women as sex workers, see these women as voluntarily being a part of this situation, see these women as reaping the rewards of being with this rich man, and then that's enough to say, well, otherwise, then they're a part of this. They're consensually a part of this, despite the fact that you could know that they're being abused, you could know that they're being beaten, you could know that they're being drugged, you could know that they're having their money withheld from them. So I think this case is a reflection of a failure we have in societal understanding of consent and victims.
How do you? So I hear you say that obviously people can withdraw consent at any time, and obviously I agree with that 1,000%. I think what the public was struggling with more than that was the idea of someone giving consent, withdrawing consent, and then giving it again. I.e., if he's that much of a monster, why did you want back in? Why did you want to do these things? And people, and it made them lose. It made Cassie at least lose credibility in the eyes of a lot of people I talked to outside in the outside world. I don't know how the jury saw it, obviously, but is that a challenge for defense attorneys to get people to understand how complex consent and relationships and love and attachment can be? Like, you could be attached to somebody who's really fucked up.
I think it shows how much we say we understand abuse. We say as a society, oh, emotional abuse is wrong. Emotional abuse is wrong. Psychological abuse is wrong. But we obviously don't understand it, because whenever people, in order for somebody to be the continued victim of abuse, right, it doesn't just come with just physical abuse. It comes with a certain psychological retraining, basically reconditioning to believe that this person is basically a hero. This is somebody that I need. You're supposed to love this. You're being trained to second guess, what has happened to you, to still stay with this person. And yet whenever we see victims respond the way that a victim, somebody who has been conditioned to love their abuser and stay with their abuser, go back, our response is always, oh, why did you stay? Why did you this? Why did you that? And it's like, are we not understanding what's happening? We've said that we understand that they're under duress, under psychological abuse, they're being conditioned, and yet we don't get it. I don't know why it would confuse anybody that somebody who we've watched, who has been with a man decades older than her, a rich, powerful man who has a history beyond just physical abuse of women or anything like that, who has a physical abuse, a pattern, a history of being known to be domineering, and just in business, not even just with women that he's involved with, but somebody we know has signed a 19-year-old girl to a 10-album deal and then began a relationship with her, and that he's plying her with drugs, that he's having sex with her, he's subjecting her to all of this, and we can't understand how a woman that's been in that environment for decades is going to have a hard time leaving, especially when we've seen videos of what happens when they leave. So it's ridiculous to me. It's ridiculous that this is something that needs to be continue to be explained, but it obviously does. And I think we see it show up in a lot less drastic scenarios. I think we see it every day, where we see people complain about being with a terrible person, or that this person's treated them this way, or they don't take it, and they go back to them, and everyone's like, well, whatever. That's not my problem then. If you ain't leave, if you ain't get it, you must want the abuse. And
you must want that, right?
Right. Meanwhile,
someone literally wrote that here. They said the first time you're a victim, the 15th time you're a volunteer. I think that's oversimplifying how relationships work, how abuse works, like you said, how trauma works.
You can consent to abuse. Like, that makes it seem like we understand structurally how other people stay in positions of subservience. Like, we get that in other ways. So I don't understand why we think like it's incumbent on a victim to be able to stop their abuser, get out of a situation that makes it not abuse anymore, especially when we know that the average person, when statistically speaking, the most dangerous time to be in an abusive relationship is when you try to leave. That's when you're most likely to be killed. And we've seen video evidence of what happened to Cassie when she tried to leave. So I'm not sure why you think if somebody if they've been abused and they're staying in the dynamic, why you see it as they're signing up for that. I also would like to push back on this idea that people think you can consent to abuse, because I've seen that a lot. People be like, you knew what you were getting. You knew what you were getting. There's no amount of, if somebody is an abuser, if somebody is unethical, if they're doing things that are wrong to you, you can't consent to that. Whether or not it does not, if knowing somebody or having any reason to know that a person is a bad person, or you've heard any kind of whispers or whatever have you, will in no way make you responsible for the violence or the abuse that person has done. You cannot consent to abuse.
When you watched the trial, did you feel like, if you were a juror, how would you have ruled?
If I was a juror, I would have convicted Diddy on the letter of the law, because I understand. To me, it's ridiculous that you'll find that he's not guilty of these other charges, but he is guilty. of I think it's reflected in how they ruled what they found, that what they saw more of a problem is in the victims. They like it's clear to me you don't want to all the other charges that would require you to recognize abuse against them, you say no. But when it comes to recognizing them as sex workers, you recognize that, and that tells me everything about what we think as a society about whether or not sex workers can consent. We basically think it's clear based on this ruling that we think that anything you do to a sex worker, somebody that's in this situation, is acceptable. Which says, which is a dangerous precedent, because I'm like, that kind of logic, I don't think I think people forget sometimes that as a worker, just as a regular worker, the United States like employment system, the law is exploitative and was much worse because people had these kind of ideas, these kind of capitalistic ideas around regular employment. This idea that, oh, if you work somebody, you get in a job or whatever, they could do whatever they want to. You need to do what you need to do. No matter how long they work you, it don't matter how little pay, whatever little benefits. And this is a similar, it shows up how much we have this understanding of abuse by employer when it comes to sex work. We think that sex workers are they should expect to get whatever it is that these people do to them. They should see this as an exploitative industry, and because you went there, that's what happens to you. So I would have ruled. I mean, I would have voted to convict Diddy. But at the same time, like I said, I do understand. I think there's always, I hate how people carry it. I hate the fact that people are going to take a verdict like this and use this to try to absolve him from being an abuser or obfuscate from his crimes. I don't like the idea that people are going to use it and pretend, like make this about like, oh, the state is going after him. But I do think there's still a kernel of truth there. And I think
and that's what I'm struggling with. Like for example, I'm an abolitionist. I don't believe prostitution should be illegal.
Yeah.
So watching him go to prison for whether it's a year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, whatever, for prostitution, which I don't think should be illegal anyway, is hard for me, right?
Yeah.
I actually don't want to see him convicted on that charge.
Yeah.
Especially, I don't, and the RICO, to your point, is often overused, and it's definitely overused for us, for Black and brown folk.
Absolutely.
So it's like, but also when I look at the letter of the law, to me, it looked like he was guilty in all of it.
Yeah.
So I'm in this weird place of like, I don't want to look like I'm riding for Diddy because I'm not. I don't want to see him not held accountable because I do want him accountable. I don't think the prison is the best place for accountability.
Yeah.
But this is where I'm just conflicted and torn through all of this, not in terms of what I think is right and wrong, but in terms of how to think about these outcomes.
I think we can do all the things. I think my position has always been, even when, from the moment we first heard about the Cassie allegations, my position has always been that we can call Diddy a monster and also recognize the overreach of the government. Because I thought, and when you remember when they originally raided his compound, his home, I thought that was unnecessary. I said that. I said that in my Diddy is a monster commentary. I said this is problematic. There is nothing that we have been given as the public that suggests that they need to show up here with guns, armed, like arresting his children and doing things like that.
Yeah, like Tony Montana was in there with the machine guns. Like
exactly. So I think multiple things can be done. I think you can recognize that Diddy is an abusive, powerful, rich man that has enjoyed certain benefits of being able to avoid accountability both within and outside of the legal system. I think you can recognize that Diddy needs that there should be something that should be done about Diddy, that he should receive some kind of consequences for what he did, while also recognizing that the government uses particular tools like RICO. They use public sentiment as opportunities to go after people, especially like Black men and Black people, that they think that they have some kind of like manufactured public consent for them to go after. Because I think there's an argument to be made. There's an argument to be made that once we as a public start discussing something and they see the personal like the tides change on public favor on a person, it seems like okay to go after them. I think there's something to that. Obviously, Cassie filed civil suits. There became a public discussion, and the government decided, oh, y'all don't fuck with Diddy? Okay, we heard some stuff.
Say less, right?
Charges. And I think you can call them out on the fact that the government listens to us. They listen to our discussions. They pay attention to what we're doing, and they use those as opportunities to criminalize Black people further. I think we see that in lots of different ways. Like another example of that, I think, was earlier I think it was earlier this year or last year when there was that incident with the black girls like doing track, and one of them like accidentally hit the other one with the baton as she was crossing over, and everybody was having this big discussion about whether or not she's wrong, whether or not she did that on purpose. And then the next thing you know, after weeks and weeks of that discussion, all of a sudden the criminal law decides they're going to interject themselves into this sporting event, this thing that's happened between these teenage girls, and all of a sudden they're charging one of them with a crime, assault. And the reason why they did that, and I wish people had talked about that, but they didn't. The reason why they felt comfortable doing that and criminalizing this young girl was because they saw us and our commentary say we would be okay with it. So I think there is a conversation that could be had about how the criminal system jumps in and tries to use how we feel and how we've discussed about something socially as a justification for further and over criminalization of Black people. I think that conversation can still be had. You can still criticize the use of RICO and show how it backfired on the state in this case, while also saying that Diddy is still an abuser, like separate and apart from whether or not he beats his legal case or the legal requirements or these charges. Just us, we know that if I see you kick a woman like a football,
right,
and I hear a bunch of other arguments, I hear if there's anything for us to discuss around you drugging women, beating women, threatening women, you are an abuser. And that can be true in and apart from what involvement we think the criminal justice system should play in it.
Before you go, I just wanted to get your predictions here. What's next in this Diddy thing for you? How do you think the next steps play out?
I think he's going to be sentenced to some time because after the verdict, his team asked for bail pending sentencing, which is a good move. That's a good move on his defense attorneys. They should. Their argument was he was only convicted of the lesser charges, so he should get bail. And I think
what wasn't given bail. I mean, I don't get. I mean, I
not
get
giving bail because they're going to lock his ass up. Let me tell you, that's exactly what I was about to tell you.
Yeah,
if they had not given him, if they had granted the request for bail, I would have known. Okay, at sentencing, they're probably not giving him time, because I think that's what we talk about when we talk about the importance why pretrial detention plays such a big role in cases in general. Because how the state normally looks at it. Let's say you have a case, you're fighting a case for 2 years, and you've been out on the case that entire time. By the time you get convicted, it looks favorably on you to say I should not do jail time, because obviously the state does not recognize me as a danger because they let me out, and I was out this whole time fighting the case, and nothing else further happened, so there's no need for that. So in this case, if they had let Diddy out, I would have known, okay, they don't intend to give him jail time. But because they didn't, that says they're not going to let you out pending sentencing, and then at sentencing say you need to be in prison because you're a danger or whatever have you, or you need to. So it says to me that they probably intend to give him time, even if not a lot of time.
Here's what I'm struggling with that. Again, I don't care about Diddy. I'm thinking about the rest of us when we get charged. If he was found not guilty of these things, and he was found guilty of the lesser charge, it seems to me that the argument for him staying in is that he's a danger to society, he's a threat. But legally, he didn't blow up. In the eyes of the law, he didn't blow up Cuddy's car. No. In the eyes of the law, he didn't kidnap anybody. In the eyes of the law, he didn't traffic anybody.
In the eyes of the law, he transported. He was out there transporting people for the purposes of committing this crime. I think
is that enough to deny bail, though?
I would, if I were his defense attorney, I'm arguing for bail. If I'm the prosecutor, what I'm going to argue is Diddy is a flight risk. Diddy has extensive opportunities to leave. I think at the beginning of this case, they had to admonish Diddy and Diddy's team several times for intimidation of witnesses. So I think if I'm the prosecution, I'm going to say that we've had him in all this time because he's been a danger to different people involved with the case. Outside of, he is an incredibly rich man who was a flight risk and who may still be nervous about sentencing and pull a Russell Simmons or anything.
Oh, that's true. He could, in theory, get 20 years, and he could be like,
yeah,
I'll go to Bali with Russell.
And my argument would be, I'm still looking for jail time on him. Yeah, he was convicted on the lowest of these charges, but those charges still come with jail time, and I'm looking for prison time for him, so I don't want him out. That would be my argument. If I'm a defense attorney, I'm going to say, well, I'm going to say what they said. But like I said, to me, the sentencing, the bail had everything to do with what happens in sentencing and nothing to do with what the prosecution or the defense said. What they decided here on bail, to me, is just indicative of what they plan to do on sentencing. They're not going to let the man out if they plan to put him in, and they're not gonna keep him in if they plan to let him out. So I think he's going to go to prison, but probably not for an extremely long time. I know they're asking for like 4 to 5 years.
You think 4 to 5 years?
They're asking for 4. The prosecution are asking for a max of 4 to 5 years. I think is what they're hoping to get.
What do you think is realistic here?
I think Diddy can do something as little. I wouldn't be shocked if he got something like 2 years, or you know what I mean? I wouldn't be surprised if he got something like that.
That
I
was
guess
my
I wouldn't have been surprised if he didn't get jail time at all. But that was to me indicative on what happened at bail. Once they didn't give him bail, I said, okay, he's getting time.
Yeah, I had initially I said a year and a day. Then I was like, looking at the charges and how bloodthirsty the prosecutor is. I said probably a year per charge. You know,
and I'm sure they're going to go after him civil in state-wise. That's another thing that I'm sure has happened. They're probably also not going to
really.
Oh yeah, I'm sure he's going to get some state charges. Yeah, he beat this RICO and he's going to get some state charges, which is going to, you know, it's going to fuel the people who feel like, see, this is a witch hunt. This is the, you know, criminal system wanting to get somebody. And again, like I said, there's always a kernel of truth to something. I don't like that the criminal system does that at all either. They do that. There is truth that the United States criminal system, on the rare occasion that somebody that they want beat the case, they find another opportunity to do it. And I think that is something that should be considered, should be a violation of one's rights. It's not, but it should be.
It should be. I mean, if you beat the feds, you shouldn't have to go and fight the state again. I mean,
right.
You know,
they're gonna do it.
Oh well, and he's got a host of civil charges. I saw Sarah Stokes for making the band show sued him last week. We got the charge against him and his son. I mean, Diddy's gonna be in court for a long time.
Yeah, he's far from done with legal issues, and he's gonna have legal issues even beyond once he comes out of whatever cases. Because I think people forget he's gonna have 1 million fines and fees associated with every conviction that he gets.
Right.
Everything that he loses, he's gonna be paying off, even with the jail time. Like America loves to say, "Oh, you do the crime, you do the time," but they don't mention that they come with fees. I was shocked to find that out as a defense attorney. Like, we convicted people and making them pay a price associated with that, but we do when we convict people on federal charges, criminal charges, we send them to prison. There is a massive, hefty fine that comes with those charges. So that's another thing. Diddy's gonna have a long time of legal problems to deal with.
Wow. Well, I know you're a legal expert. You're also a pop culture fanatic. As we wrap up here, I just wanted to ask you, do you think Diddy is ever, will he ever be welcome back to the cookouts? Will he ever be at the award shows? Will he ever be?
I think the unfortunate part is that he hasn't been uninvited. I think that's the unfortunate part. He's been uninvited now. If Diddy had got out today, had they given him bail, I know without a shadow of a doubt that he was throwing a party in a vibrant suit tonight, and the pictures was gonna be a shade room, and the comment section was gonna say, "Justice has been served. Y'all can't be hating on that man. He beat the case. He was free." That's what they're gonna say. "Oh my God, we love to see you home." That's what they're gonna say.
Wow. You know what? Sadly, I can't disagree with you at all. I think you're 100% right. Olay, thanks for hanging out with me. I appreciate you for staying up.
Thank you, Fred. Come on, Olay and Fred, sometime when you're free.
Absolutely, everybody. Make sure you watch Olay and Friends. It's the best show out. Yo, go to YouTube, check it out. She got a couple other shows on there. She do the most, and it's all it's brilliant, it's funny, it's all the things. Love you, sister. Peace. Everybody, make sure you check Olay out on everything that she does. She really is dope. That's good people right there. What a mess. What a mess. What a mess. Thank you, Shawnee. Simply Shawnee just said, "I enjoy you both." Thank you so much. Thank you for the generous donation. Michael Washington said, "Can you break down the Mann Act and how it relates here?" Again, I sort of did it, Michael, probably before you came in, so you can rewind. But the general gist here is that the Mann Act was a law initially just defined to protect white women. It was literally called the White Slavery Act, right? The White Slave Traffic Act, I think is what it's called. And it's been around for 125 years at this point, almost. And it was designed basically to create a kind of legal mechanism to protect white women in European. Initially, initially it was designed to protect people from kind of Christian slavery, and then in the United States, it became a mechanism to protect specifically white women who were being sex trafficked. You know, they were being sold into prostitution. Illinois was a big. I said Chicago. Obviously, it was named after a rep from Illinois. And the idea was, again, to protect white women from interstate travel. It was used for prostitution. It was eventually used also to stop interracial relationships. Again, the great boxer Jack Johnson was charged with the Mann Act and convicted. And the idea here was a black man, white woman, he must be prostituting her. This law was rooted in anti-blackness, and oftentimes the Mann Act is used as a mechanism of anti-blackness. I'm not saying that's the case with Diddy here. I think Diddy did the shit. I think Diddy is guilty. Legally, I think Diddy's guilty. So I'm not caping for Diddy here, but I'm just saying that is the root of the Mann Act. And Diddy could get up to 10 years per count. I suspect, as Olay does, that it's gonna be much less, but that it will be something. Yeah, and I'm not sure that the intent of this law is being honored in the way that it's being used here. So again, take that for what it's worth. All right, we got a couple more things we're going to talk about other than Diddy, and I want to make sure we get to that too, because it is a long night for many undocumented migrants who are struggling. And I want to get to what Donald Trump has said and done lately to deal with it. Donald Trump, in fact, let me take a beat, just because I realize now that there's some content here that I want y'all to see. There's some content here that I want y'all to see. Let me pull this up for you. Don't kill me. Don't kill me, producers. It's just a little mistake I made. All right, y'all. Let's get to it. Donald Trump doubled down on restarting American slavery with the migrant population. In an interview on Fox News, a new interview, Donald Trump says that he plans to create a temporary pass for undocumented workers in farming and in hospitality. After pushing mass deportations, he's now admitting that if the U.S. kicks out long-term workers, the same ones who grow your food, same ones who change your sheets, etc., that it could kill entire industries. He told Maria Bartiromo, the farmer knows he's not going to hire a murderer. And Jesus Christ. And he said he's looking at a plan where, quote, the farmer can have a little control. Basically, let employers vouch for undocumented workers who've been around doing hard labor for years. That's basically what he's saying. Trump said he's on, quote, both sides. Toughest on immigration, but also the biggest friend to farmers and hotel owners. In other words, I'm a xenophobe. I hate foreigners, particularly south of the border. I hate Mexicans. I hate Guatemalans, etc. I hate all of them. I don't want them here. But if they are here, I support my friend's right to exploit them in all of these professions. That's what he's basically saying. Anyway, the feds had already paused some raids at farms and hotels earlier this month, but then Donald Trump's own immigration officials, they walked it back. And so now he's floating the idea, Donald Trump is floating the idea of passes for quote unquote good workers, while still talking tough on deporting everybody else. He says the White House is working on a plan that would let farmers, this is so disgusting, let farmers have, I think the word he used was ownership. Anyway, check this out. Let me know what you think. Sorry, we got a little, there we go. I think the audio's down. Let's see. This is from an Instagram page. We got the clip here. Let's check it out now.
Now, a program of people leaving on a sponsorship and coming right back. Can you give us a little more detail about that and why, in the view of some hardliners, it's not amnesty?
Share of our farmers and hotel workers and various other people. And we're working.
I'm sorry, this isn't working. Let me pull up the clip button.
On it right now, and Ron's.
We'll get this clip right. I apologize, y'all. Sadly, Donald Trump says so many things about slavery, it's actually harder to find than you might think. But here it is. Boy, I spoke too soon. Here it is. Hopefully, this is why I got a team of great editors and great producers who will save my behind on this. And on the replay, this won't look so crazy. I'm pulling this up off Twitter just so y'all can see it. Here we go.
The idea of finding some way to get farm workforce and service sector workforce. And I think you've discussed somehow a program of people leaving on a sponsorship and coming right back. Can you give us a little more detail about that and why, in the view of some hardliners, it's not amnesty?
Take care of our farmers and hotel workers and various other people, and we're working on it right now. And Ron's going to be involved, and you're involved already. So we have a lot of cases where ICE will go into a farm, and these are guys working there for 10, 15 years, no problem. the farmers know them. We're going to put, it's called farmer responsibility or owner responsibility, where they're going to be largely responsible for these people. And they know these people. They've worked on the farms for 15 years, and all of a sudden, so I have a great, Ron does, Christy does, we have a great feeling for the farmer and for others in the same position. And we're going to give them responsibility for people. And we're going to have a system of signing them up so they don't have to go. They can be here legally. They can pay taxes and everything. They're not getting citizenship, but they get other things. And the farmers need them to do the work. Without those people, you're not going to be able to run your farm.
This is wild. This is Donald Trump, though. This is exactly who that man is exactly what that man is. There's no surprise here. But this is basically slavery for undocumented migrants. He's talking about, hey, we want to keep them out, but if they come in, they're getting exploited. Anyway, that's it on Donald Trump. I can't take any more Trump talk. But I do want to say one more thing. I want to talk a little bit about something going on in Flint, Michigan. And if you don't know, I wrote a book years ago called Nobody, Casualties of America's War on the Vulnerable from Ferguson to Flint and Beyond. And one of the things we talked about was the extraordinary crisis going on with water in Flint. So let's get to it. It took 10 years, 11,000 pipes, and way too much pain. But Flint, Michigan finally finished the job. The state of Michigan just told a federal court that it is officially done replacing lead water lines across Flint. That's after nearly a decade of lawsuits, of protests, of public outcry over one of the biggest environmental disasters in modern United States history. Remember, this crisis started back in 2014 when the city switched its water source to the Flint River, a dirty move by state-appointed emergency manager. Anyway, he was under Governor Rick Snyder. And they did all of it just to save money, which is always the problem. But they also skipped treatments that corroded the pipes. And because of that, we saw lead pumped into thousands of homes. And now, after a 2017 court settlement forced the city and the state to clean it up, the Natural Resources Defense Council confirms over 28,000 properties were touched and nearly 11,000 lead pipes were pulled out. Now, this is great news. Absolutely great news. Don't get that twisted. But it's not justice. Hundreds of homes still need work, especially the ones that are vacant or where people didn't consent to the testing. And no amount of pipe swabbing is going to undo the trauma that Flint families have lived through. I'm talking about the poisoned kids, the illnesses, just so much trust that's been broken. Flint says it'll be replacing the last pipes throughout the rest of the year. We got some information in the caption for residents still dealing with lead. If someone you know is impacted, make sure you share it with them. Anyway, family, I want to thank you all for watching. I want to thank you all for supporting. Just thank you. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the join button. And if you're so inclined, become a monthly subscriber, a monthly paid member of the channel. Either way, whatever you decide, make sure that you at least pay your tuition tonight. Go to Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, or Zelle and drop something in. It can be $1. I'm grateful. It can be $1 million. I'm a little more grateful. But anything, I'll say this, we're building. It's July 2nd, and we got a lot of work to do. We got more staff to hire. We got more technology to unveil. We got a new studio to fix. We could use your support. This is all from the muscle. There's no corporate media. There's no corporate media account here. There's no mainstream outlet here writing checks or funding what we do. This is all on the muscle. This is all from the people, by the people. Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, Zelle gives you an opportunity to drop something in to help us build. I want to pay payroll for the month. I want to be able to build out this month new technology. I want to be able to get a better camera. I can't do those things without your help, without your support. So please go to Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, or Zelle. Again, $1 is great. $1 million is great. Anything in between is great. But we're asking everybody who's listening right now, if they can, to drop $5, excuse me. Just $5. Yeah, $5. On Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, or Zelle. Anyway, family, I'll see y'all soon. I love you.